Hey gang, welcome back. Let's start working on our next problem here. We're still in session 6 of the master production scheduling for NPR, and let's just roll on in here. We're talking about problem 6.3, a rolling schedule. First thing you got to just notice is we're coming off problem 6.2. The schedule has changed, right? That's real life. You've got a forecast, you got orders. Something happened yesterday. You got some more orders in. Forecast is higher. So you have to make adjustments. That's what the system's doing. It's continually balancing supply and demand. So you look here, the grid from last period. Starts out the forecast is 5, 5, 8, 10, and 15. And then you look, and the forecast has gone up quite a bit. Period 2, it's 20. Period 3, 20. Period 4, 20. Period 5 is 15. And they added on a new time frame, period 6, right? Because it's a rolling forecast. You got 10 on hand. And so the way the book goes here is it calculates out what your PAB would be, and it calculates negative balance here, which I'm not too crazy about because you don't have a negative balance in real life because you would do MPS. But anyway, so you got 10 on hand, and in period 2 your forecast is 20, so that leaves you negative 10 in period 2. Then you've got negative 10, then you got 20 that you need for period 3, that give you 0, right? And you have the MPS as a carryover, right? So your MPS is 30 still, because the system hadn't regenerated yet at this point. So this is before you ran your ordering system. Maybe you run your MRP, your scheduling system at nighttime. So requirements file hadn't come over, or requirements file actually has. But anyway, so you got 30. So you got 0 on hand, that's your projected balance in period 3, and minus 20 in period 4, minus 35 in period 5, and minus 55 in period 6. So this is a carryover. That's what happened. You've got an MPS of 30, so obviously if you've got a negative balance in period 2, you got to try to pull that demand and you got to do a build in period 2, or you'll be in trouble. So I want you to calculate the new MPS and revise the PABs as necessary here. So here's what you got to do. You got to make another build. So since there's no lead time, you can have a build in period 2 of 30, right? So your PAB is 10 to start out with. You would have a build of 30 MPS. That's a build. In period 2, you'd add 30. So I give you 40 minus 20. So you have 20 PAB in period 2. And you've got a 20, and you still got a build of 30 left over from last time. That would give you 50, right? They give you 50 units. Minus your 20 is 30. That's your PAB in period 3 is 30. 30 minus 20 is 10. Your PAB in period 4 is 10. And then you have you got 10 minus 15, which is negative. So you get a build of 30 there. MPS of 30 in period 5. That give you a PAB of 25 in period 5. And 25 minus 20 is 5 for your PAB in period 5. So you'll see, a lot of times they'll, Apex question is, what period do you need to do an MPS? They'll ask you stuff like that. So that's a pretty easy type question to ask in multiple choice. And you'll have, would you do what periods do you have an MPS in? They may ask. And it could be 2, 3, and 5 is the correct answer here. But, you have to know how to calculate all this stuff or you won't be able to get it. It says, what factors will affect the feasibility of the new MPS? Well, can you make the 30 units in period 2, right? Because it's a change from last time. Can you pull that in and make something there? So are you going to be able to make everything? That's the question. So, and well, what do you do if you can't make it? And you have to call your customer and say we're going to be late, or you're going to have to try to find a way to make it somehow, right? That's your only two options. Now, available to promise is a calculation, right? And theoretically, when customer service gets an order in, they'll be able to look on the computer screen and ought to tell them what they're available to promise, so they don't have to think about it. It's used for order promising. It's based on your inventory and your build plan. It's important to know that it ignores the forecast and focus only on customer orders, right? And it's calculated. You got to know how this is calculated and for your test. And the first period always has a ATP, no matter what. The first period always has an ATP, and then every period that has an MPS will have an ATP. So you won't have an ATP in periods where you don't have an MPS, and it's not the first period. So two types, discrete and cumulative. We'll show you the difference between both. Now let's look at the discrete ATP calculation. You'll see you've got the grid. You got a forecast of 5, 5, 8, 10, and 15. and your PAB is 12. So you start out with 12. PAB is 20. So you start out with 20, and you take 20 minus the 5 customer orders in period 1 and the 3 customer orders in period 2, and that gives you available to promise of 12. And the reason you stop there is because you have an MPS in period 3. So you stop whenever there's an MPS. And you'll see in the how to calculate the next ATP, you have a 28 ATP in period 3. And that is calculated because you have an MPS of 30 in period 3 minus your customer orders of 2. And that gives you 28. So that's how you get it. The answer here is you've got an ATP of 12 in period 1 and 28 in period 3. So that's how you get it. That's a discrete ATP calculation. Now let's problem 6.5. Calculate the new ATP based on new order quantities. So we're going to change the order quantities around. Something changed. Someone placed an order. And let's calculate the new ATP. So you've got an ATP of 20, right? You got 20, right? And 20 minus, you could have 4 orders in period 2, so you have 20 minus 9. That's 11, right? Because you got 20 minus 5 in period 1 minus 4 in period 2, and that is 11. That'll give you your available to promise in period 1. Now in period 3, you're not going to have an ATP in period 2 because there's no MPS. In period 3, there's a MPS, and you calculate that as 30 minus 7 minus 5, right? Because period 3 has orders 7 orders, and period 4 has a 5 orders. So you've got 30 minus 12 is 18. So that's your ATP for period 3. Period 4 and period 5 doesn't have an ATP because there's no MPS in those periods. So a lot of abbreviations here. Sorry, ATP, MPS, PAB. Just part of the lingo that we're trying to use here. But so again, problem 6.6 is going to calculate the cumulative ATP. And that's calculated through an additive process, so it's not that bad. You'll see you have an ATP of 11 in period 1, ATP of 18 in period 3. So in your first period for ATP, you just carry over that 11, and your ATP for period 3 is 29, which is 11 plus 18. So you just add those two numbers up. So that's simply how you calculate the cumulative ATP. It's based on the first period is always the same, or the first calculation in the first period, and you just add those ATPs up to get wherever the next MPS is. So 11 for period 1 and 29 for period 3 for that. So not too bad. So anyway, so you'll see there's an example of consuming the forecast, and next problem, it talks about the need for a schedule stability here. What happens if you're changing these schedules all the time? What happens? Well, if you have no changes at all, it's a very, very strict schedule, then your customers are going to get mad at you, right? You have bad customer service because you won't be flexible. As a buyer, I've dealt with people like this. They want a stable schedule. They won't move for you. And then it's hard to get stuff when you need it, right? If you have too many changes and there's no stability, costs are going to be high. A lot of Saturdays, overtime, and dissatisfied workers. So you want to try to keep as stable a schedule as you can, but you have to have ways that you can move stuff in and out for your customers, right? So just part of doing business. MPS time fences and zones. There's a frozen zone for most people, and that is, in this example here, this has got a frozen schedule for 2 to 3 weeks. Working with the Toyota family, Toyota is 8 weeks. That's their frozen schedule. It used to be 8 weeks, but I was working that system. 8 weeks are frozen. They won't do anything to the schedule at all. And after that, on out, this example, 2 to 3 weeks is frozen. And 6 to 9 weeks is slushy, right? You can move stuff in and out, but your capacity is maybe limited in this area. You can only take so many substitutes. And then after 9 weeks out, it's liquid, right? You can take orders. You got time to plan. You've got sufficient lead time to make changes, so that's liquid. So frozen, stays slushy, and liquid. That's the terminology. Now, time fences here, you'll see problem 6.7, and you'll see we want you to do a calculation here. Calculate the new PAB, MPS, and ATP using the demand time fence. You'll see you've got a forecast of 5, 5, 8, 10, and 15. and custom orders of 53200. And the demand time fence is at the end of period 2. So at this time period, demand time fence means your schedule is firm, right? So if your schedule is firm in period 1 and 2, you want to just look at orders. You don't want to look at the forecast because your schedule is in place, it's firm. You're not going to take any more orders in period 1 and 2. So if you're calculating the PAB for period 1 and 2, you take your 20 minus your 5 is 15 for period 1. And 15 minus 3, very important, 15 minus 3, that'll give you a PAB of 12 in period 2, right? So, because you look at orders here, because you're inside the time fence. Now, from period 2 to 3, you're going to look at the forecast, right? So you're going to take 12 minus 8 is 4, but your safety stock is 5. So you're going to have a PAB of 30 in period 3. So you're going to have a PAB of 34 in period 3, because you're adding that 30 build in. And 34 minus 10 is 24 in period 4. Then 24 minus 15 is 9 in the last period 15. And you have to calculate your ATP, right? So you're going to have an ATP of what? 20 minus 5 minus 3 is 12 in period 1. And it's going to be 28 in period 3, because that's 30 minus 2 orders. So that's how you calculate all that. So that's how you calculate your ATP there. And just a quick wrap-up of this whole session. You know what we talk about? Well, we just went to the build plan. We talked just a little bit about sales operation plan. You know, it's family planning. Sounds funny, family planning. Planning at the family levels. It's, monthly buckets. And then we went to the MPS, which is your end items. And we looked at these grids. You have to know how to calculate these grids in and out, in and out. The more practice you have at it, the better you are. I'll tell you one thing. If you take the test tends to be a little bit easier because they're multiple choice, so, you have to kind of look and see what makes sense sometimes, but you do need to know how to calculate these grids. So that's pretty much what we talked about here in Session 6. We'll continue on kind of with the same stuff in Session 7. I'll be back up at Maysville for that one, and then we'll do case studies at the end, and that's it, gang. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you soon. Thanks very much.